Leonardo da Vinci, considered by many to be the master of the Renaissance. Leonardo di Ser Piero da Vinci was born on April 15th, 1452, in the small town of Vinci, in the territory of Florence, Italy. Leonardo was the illegitimate son of a Florentine notary. He lived with his father for his entire childhood. There's not very much information about da Vinci's childhood until the age of about 14, when he became apprenticed to Verrocchio in the city of Florence. Verrocchio was a prominent artist in Florence. Leonardo and several other young apprentices worked under Verrocchio on many different projects. Leonardo was exposed to several different techniques using a variety of mediums such as metalworking and chemistry, in addition to painting, sculpting, and modeling. Da Vinci collaborated with Verrocchio on the painting of the Baptism of Christ. This was very common for a master to have his apprentices collaborate with him and work on elements of the painting as well. Most of the painting was done by Verrocchio. One thing that's interesting about this painting with Da Vinci is that normally the master would be the most skilled and kind of the best at the techniques used in the painting. But you can see the elements that were done by Da Vinci, his technique and skill, even at a young age, surpassed that of Verrocchio. So you can see even, with very little practice and being so young, his skill was really impressive, and it kind of gives an idea of what's to come from Leonardo da Vinci. By the age of 20, he was accepted as a master in the Guild of St. Luke in Florence and was given a workshop by his father. So the workshop was set up in 1478 by himself and his father. He was commissioned by the church for the Adoration of the Magi, the painting seen here on the right, in 1481. This was a huge project for him, and it was a very big commission for him to receive from the church. Unfortunately, he left it unfinished when he left for Milan in 1482, which ended up being characteristic of Leonardo, leaving things unfinished. But even though it was unfinished, the techniques used were still studied by young artists in Florence for long to come. Even unfinished, it was still an impressive painting and worth studying. Just his use of the detail and the use of the detail in the background and techniques used were studied for quite a while. So in Milan, Leonardo left for Florence for Milan in 1482. There he was commissioned by the Confraternity of the Immaculate Conception for the famous painting Madonna of the Rocks, also called the Virgin of the Rocks. This scene has been depicted several times throughout history, but in this particular painting, Leonardo uses a couple of different things, different elements than what you normally see in this painting. Typically it's not set like in a rocky landscape like seen here, and you can see the landscape kind of peeking through the rocks in the back as that smoky kind of sensation, and Leonardo uses a technique called sfumato, and that kind of blends. It gives you that feeling that you're actually looking at it, where you're focusing on the picture, the subjects in the front, so the background is kind of blurry, so you can see that background, and it blends in. The Last Supper is another famous work that Leonardo was commissioned for. He was commissioned for the monastery of Santa Maria del Grazie. This famous work is one that's been very difficult to preserve. The painting was done on a wall in the monastery, and Leonardo wanted to give the look of an oil painting. So he used an oil mix so that it wouldn't dry too quickly, and that he could really get the feeling that he wanted to with the painting. Unfortunately, the mix that he used really does not stand up well over time. It had actually even begun to deteriorate during his lifetime. So now, several hundred years later, it's almost completely deteriorated. So we have several renditions of this work, but there are elements here, the use of detail, you can see background. That was really characteristic of Leonardo's style, is the landscape in the background. You can see that through the windows. But unfortunately, this painting has not stood the test of time because he wanted it to have the right effect. So during the Renaissance, artists were commonly proficient in many different subjects or skills. Leonardo's interest in anatomy, mechanics, engineering, and botany were not uncommon. That was very typical for artists to have several different things that they were doing. They would be doing architecture, and they would also be doing painting, so that was very common. But what separates Da Vinci from the rest is his high level of skill and understanding with every undertaking. It's almost as if Leonardo da Vinci attempted to do something, he would master it and become the best of the best. He was really an incredible painter with unrivaled skill, but then his notebooks showed an amazing intellect for advanced design of his machines. The majority of the machines found in the notebook were never built because they were really too ahead of their time. He had several machines that he had drawn that would have worked, but there's no engines available to power them. There's no propulsion. So, and you can see here the Vitruvian Man shows that his fascination with symmetry found in the human body and in nature, and really how beautiful it is, and the beauty found in nature. So the Mona Lisa. A discussion about Leonardo da Vinci is not complete without the Mona Lisa. This painting is probably the most recognized painting in the world, and certainly the most famous of da Vinci's paintings. It was painted by Leonardo between 1503 and 1506 while living in Florence. He had moved back to Florence after living in Milan. The subject of the painting is thought to be the wife of a Florentine merchant, but it's not known for certain. Some people think that it might have been his mother. There are several elements that make this painting spectacular. So for this painting, the portrait with the landscape in the background really is incredible. That's not something that you typically saw at the time. And then the blending of the human portrait with the landscape and this technique of sfumato, it really shows Leonardo's love of beauty within nature and the human body, and to really blend those elements together. So he uses that. And then the detail used in her clothing, you can see the shading. It really gives it a very realistic effect. And with that technique of sfumato, and you can see the subject in the front, the woman is in great detail. It's very clear, and then you can see the background has that kind of smoky feel. So it looks like you're really looking at her. It looks you get that effect where she's in focus, but it's not in the back, and it really gives that incredible realistic look. So the last years of his life were spent between Milan, Rome, and France. He actually died in May 2nd, 1915 in France at the court of King Francois I. And he continued to work on several different projects right up until his death. And despite leaving a trail of unfinished works, which really was typical of Leonardo da Vinci, he's still one of the most gifted minds in history and has given so much to the world and so much to the Renaissance, so many different techniques, and it really is amazing how one person can be so skilled and have such great insight and understanding of so many different things, not just engineering or painting or, many people are lucky to have one of those gifts, to be even half as good as he was with any one of those things, but to be so proficient in so many different things, and just, it's incredible that what he was able to produce during the Renaissance.